So, story time about how my best friend was a murderer. Yeah. Alright, let's just get started with this one. So, a little background information. I was 17 years old and a junior whenever this all happened. And for most of my life, I grew up in a busy city. And there was a good side of the city, and then there was a bad side of the city. Of course, I lived on the bad side of the city all the way up until I got into high school. My parents had always worked super hard to give me a good life and make sure that I got a good education. And whenever I was in 6th grade, my grandma passed away, and in her will she left everything to my dad since he was her only child. But this was enough for my parents to build a house 20 minutes away from where we lived right now in a very expensive and private school district. Now, the house finally got finished whenever I was in 8th grade, but because my parents didn't want my transcripts to get screwed up if I went to a different school in the middle of the year, they decided that I was just going to finish out the year there, and we would just keep living at the house that we lived at until school was over. So fast forward to the summertime, I finally was out of school, and finally I got to see the new house. So pretty much they took me on a tour of the neighborhoods, we got to see the school, and then finally we went to my house. And can I just say, this was like one of the wealthiest neighborhoods I had ever been in my entire life. Every house had a luxury car in the driveway. Our school looked like a mansion, but not the one that I used to go to that looked like a prison on the outside. No. And you could definitely tell that this was more of a private community. Like, this wasn't just an add-on of the city. Like, you would have no reason to go to this little town unless you either went to school there, you lived there, or you had family there. So the streets were always clean. There was no garbage on the side of the roads or nothing. It was just very rich. Okay, that's how I put it. Now, don't get me wrong. We did not have the nicest house in the school district, but there were between 7 to 9 neighborhoods in the school district, and our house blended in with our neighborhood, you know? And by neighborhood, I pretty much just mean streets that had a cul-de-sac on the end and all the houses down and around the street. Anyways, it was fairly easy for me to make friends because my parents had got me involved in some activities before I even got out of my old school. But you could definitely tell right away that a lot of these kids were very stuck up and snobby just because their families had money. But they didn't try to act like that on purpose, if that makes sense. That's just the way that they grew up, because if you went to this school, you were considered to have money already, so they wouldn't really treat anyone in the school as that they were lower than them, because we all considered each other equals. But yeah, hopefully that makes sense. And even though my family now had a fuck ton of money, my parents still acted like we were broke. Like, we still never went out to eat. We still had a very low budget whenever we would go grocery shopping. So there was still barely any food in the house. So yeah, my parents were just cheapskates. But fast forward to whenever I turned 16. Now, even though I knew my parents were going to say no, I begged them for a car because you miss 99% of the shots that you don't take. But they did say no. But they made a deal with me, and I was very shook because I thought that they were just gonna be like, no, buy your own self a fucking car. They said that if I got a job and I saved up my money, they would double it. So they pretty much said if I saved up $1,000, then I would end up having $2,000. If I saved up $3,000, then I would have $6,000, and so on. But I decided that I was gonna give my parents a run for their money, and my plan was to save up between $5,000 and $7,000 before school started, so hopefully I could show up to school in my brand new car. Now, of course, I was super annoyed that I had to get a job at first, like any teenager. But this one girl who I became friends with during the summertime, we're gonna call her Noor. She worked at the golf club in our town, and if you had a membership at this golf club, you were rich. You were considered rich. Like, nothing else. If you showed that you had a membership there, no questions asked. You got money, because a membership at this golf club was around $600,000 a year. Anyway, she pretty much told me that she was making bank there. Like, I'm talking on the weekdays, she would come home with at least $150 in her pocket for only working 4 hours. And on the weekend, she never came home with less than $400. But she also did say that the one downside was she had to flirt with old pervy men, and you pretty much had to babysit their wives. Like, she ended up telling me about this one time that she was working and this PTA mom came up to her like a freaking nutcase, and she pretty much asked Noor if she could help her look for a Ziploc baggie that was filled with Coke because it had fell out of her purse. And whenever Noor couldn't find it, she said that she was too drunk to go and get more, and she couldn't let her husband find out that she was doing it because they only would do it on weekends. So she gave Noor money to go into the city, the bad part of the city, find a dealer, buy some drugs, and get back to the country club all within like 20 minutes. So Noor did exactly what she asked, and whenever she got back, the lady gave her $1,000, but later on that night, the woman ended up going to the hospital because she had an overdose, and Noor was freaking the fuck out because this woman was best friends with her mom. So Noor was like freaking the fuck out because she was like, oh shit, this woman's definitely gonna tell my mom. But this lady ended up texting Noor the next day, and she was like, hey, I know you probably heard what happened. Don't worry, your secret's safe with me as long as mine's safe with you. I think this lady had a few fucking screws loose in her head, because this was literally a 40-year-old woman that paid a child to go into a dangerous city, find a drug dealer, and you know what, actually, never mind. These people are just all really fucked up and willing to pay you a lot of money to deal with their bullshit. Anyways, so eventually she talked my friend Gia and I into getting a job with her, but it didn't take that much convincing because literally after we heard how much she made, we were all in. Pretty much. Now, Noor, Gia, and I were all like best friends before this, right? But not nearly as close as we became after we started working together. Eventually, we all started hanging out literally every day. Every freaking day. Like, if you invited one of us to go out, we were all going. We were like a fucking package deal. And since Gia's older sister was a manager at the club, we literally begged her to put us all on the same shift so that way we could work together. And she ended up putting us all on the same shifts, so period. But to be honest, there really wasn't that much for us to do at work. In fact, it was actually quite fun because we were literally getting paid to pretty much do nothing. But like I said, almost all the richest of the rich kids had memberships at this place, and the only kids that liked coming here were the ones who liked to play golf. But we were always having events that the parents would drag their kids to. So whenever the older kids would come to these events that their parents would drag them to, Gia, Noor, and I would usually just steal a bottle that we had laying around in the back for a while, and then we would all go down to the shed and smoke and drink until the event was over. So honestly, I had a pretty good summer, I'm not gonna lie. So at this point, school is almost over and summer is like thankfully here. So within the past 3 or 4 months, I have managed to save up around $5,000. And whenever I told my parents, they were literally fucking shocked. Literally. Like, they thought I stole the money at first, I'm not gonna lie. But they kept up their end of the deal. So on Saturday, we went to go look at cars, and Noor and her parents came with us because she had a similar deal in place with her parents. So we decided that we were gonna go look at cars together. Now, this was going to be Noor's 3rd car. Yes, since she turned 16. The first car that her parents bought her, brand new Mercedes. Like, I am talking custom made on the fucking website, shipped over here. Well, she ended up going up the wrong side of the highway and she caused a car pileup on the highway. She's lucky she survived because there was like nothing left of her cars when she showed me the pictures. And the second time, her parents decided that they weren't gonna buy her another car, but you know, since that was her first mess up, she could use her mom's Range Rover, which was definitely not a smart idea because I guess the one day Noor was driving home from work and she thought she hit an animal. So she wanted to check on it. Her heart was in the right place at the time, but no. Anyway, so she forgot to put the car in park. So when she got out of the car, it quite literally rolled off a fucking cliff. Yes. She's really lucky that there were no signs of like life at all on that drop down from the cliff. And those two incidents happened within the span of 2 months. And Noor had like a month or two before she turned 17. So she hasn't had a car for almost around a year. Okay guys, I clearly know that my foundation and everything doesn't match. I decided to use one of my old foundations that I haven't used in a while, and it backfired. So I know, just don't say anything, please. So anyways, after all that happened, right, her parents made her put in a little bit of work for her next car, so hopefully she would be more careful with it. But they were so proud of her because she ended up saving up like $7,000. So when we all got to the dealership, they told her that she could keep the money and that they would pay for whatever car she wanted. I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little bit jealous because, bruh, why is it always the people who just don't deserve the nice things that get the nice things? But I was happy for her, okay? I was happy for her. So while we were there, I decided on getting this Honda because 1, they're super good on gas. 2, I know it's a car that I can have for a while. And 3, it was the only car on the lot that was in my price range that did not look like a trap car. So yeah, and then Noor's parents bought her an almost brand new 2020 Beamer. BMW. It was literally so freaking nice. It had everything you could want or need in a freaking car. Well, the next day I drove us to work that day. So the next day she really wanted to drive Gia, her, and myself to work. So she pulls up in her brand new, really nice car, and as soon as she comes up the driveway, I see a small dent with a few scratches in the front of the car. So obviously I asked her what happened, and she was like, well, I was pulling into my garage, and since the guy at the dealership had told me that there were sensors on the front and back of the car and how it would automatically stop if I got too close to something, I didn't think that I would have to put it in park before I took my foot off the brake. But my dad said that we're gonna get it fixed tomorrow because it's not my fault that the guy didn't go more in depth about those features. It seemed like I was more annoyed for her about the whole situation, but I was like, whatever, it's not my car, she can do what she wants, it is what it is. But if that happened only 2 days after she got the fucking car, I was not sure if I wanted to be in the car with her while she was driving anymore. Well, fast forward, I definitely didn't feel comfortable being in the fucking car with her while she was driving. Like, some of the stuff that she did while she was driving, I don't even know how this girl got her freaking license at all. And trust me, I would tell her that this shit made me uncomfortable, but whenever I told her, she would be like, oh, you need to calm down. Like, it's not that serious. You're being paranoid. I've been in enough accidents to know what not to do. Like, how is that supposed to make me feel better? Because it doesn't. No, but seriously, she would drive with her knees while she used both of her hands to text. She would look in the mirror while driving, and I'm not talking about this mirror, no, I'm talking about the one that goes down in front of her. Or she would try to reach behind her in the back seat and look for shit while she was driving. The one time she was like, hey, can you hold the wheel real quick? And she's in the back seat for like 5 minutes. Like, this girl really acted like she had a self-driving Tesla. But even if she did have one of those, I still would not trust her in the driver's seat. Now, Gia, on the other hand, had her own car, and she's had her car for a while. But she knew how excited Noor was to be driving all of us everywhere for a while. And since Gia did drive us everywhere, she finally let Noor drive. But eventually she ended up snapping on Noor because the one day they were on the highway and Noor thought that this guy cut her off, so she was racing to catch up to him, and she ended up doing like 130 on the fucking highway. Like, she was like, here are the 2 lanes, she was going off-roading and like freaking going around cars. It was ridiculous. And Gia had told me that whenever she told her to slow the fuck down, Noor looked at her and she was like, you need to stop being such a fucking baby. And then I guess Noor started screaming at her, so she finally slowed down and she was like, you need to live a little bit. She was like, you're so fucking boring, Gia. Like, what a nice friend. Well, Noor ended up going on a vacation with her family at the beginning of the summer. So Gia and I were hanging out for a while. And yes, we love Noor, but since she was gone, it was nice not having her around, mainly because of the driving thing. Because if we didn't let her drive, then it was this whole big thing where we were against her, this and that. And I'm sorry, but it is not comfortable driving in a car with somebody who clearly doesn't give a fuck about their life or yours. And I know you guys are probably thinking, well, why didn't you just tell her that she wasn't allowed to drive? Because if we told her that, she would be like, I'm not going then. It's always you two against me. I feel like I'm so left out, this, that, and the next, you know, just like victim shit, you know, because we can't ever admit that we're in the wrong. Anyway, so Noor gets back from vacation and she started acting really weird. Like, she stopped showing up for her shifts at work, and when she would show up, she wasn't scheduled at all. And whenever she would hang out with us, she would only hang out with us for like 20 minutes and then she would dip, or she would only want to hang out with us if we were having a sleepover, and then she would come over at like 9 o'clock and fall asleep like 5 minutes into the sleepover. Now, at first we thought that she was honestly just smoking a lot of weed, because while she was on vacation with her family, she couldn't smoke at all. Her family did not like her smoking weed, so we just thought that her tolerance was really low, because she also had been gone for like 3 weeks. And for someone who smoked every single day to just stop smoking for 3 weeks, it'll have that effect on you whenever you start smoking again. But after about a month, we had stopped making that excuse for her, because the one night we had all made dinner reservations for Gia's birthday at this really nice restaurant. And Gia and I get there, we get sat down, and I called Noor after about 20 minutes of sitting there, and I'm like, hey, where are you? And she's like, oh, I'm pulling into the parking lot now. Which we both knew was a fucking lie, because this was the excuse that she had been saying like the past few weeks. Whenever she would show up late, she would pretty much be like, hey, I'm there, and then come in like 30 minutes later. Anyway, she sounded super drunk or super tired when she was on the phone, but Gia and I waited about like 30 minutes, and then we went out to the parking lot to see what the fuck was going on. And we start walking around the parking lot looking for her car, when all of a sudden we see her car parked in the back of the parking lot with her high beams on and her music fucking blasting like so freaking loud. So we walk over to the car, we're banging on the window and we're trying to wake her up. Well, eventually she like jerked her head and hit the horn, and she finally woke up.